people confuse AUKUS with ANZUS, but this puts the whole ANZUS alliance, which has been our mainstay since '51, under a real cloud if we're leaving open this question about what we would do if called upon. And it's a big if, because we know the strategic ambiguity line there between the US and Taiwan. But, I mean, if we're going to get US subs, and they're much needed in the United States for their arsenal, well, rightly Congress is saying, well, what are you going to do with them, Australia, if we need them in some sort of battle with China? Will you deploy them, as we hope you will? And our bloke's sitting on the fence and can't even give an answer.
Yes, it's a fair question to ask, I think, if you're American. And really, I don't think they're so concerned about, you know, make an ironclad commitment to a future conflict. No government would ask for that. They're really just asking, hey, Australia, are you still with us? You know, are you still actually committed to this alliance relationship? Because you're behaving in a strange way if you are. And I think it's perfectly reasonable for the Americans to be asking those questions, seeing as it's their technology. They're proposing to sell this to us. They'd like to have some sense about what role we might play. And we can answer that question, I think, very eloquently by saying, hey, there's 25,000 or 30,000 troops actually exercising across Australia's beaches, even as we speak, showing
right
that collectively we work together. You know, we're out to deter war. And, you know, we've got our eyes on you, China. We know what's going on. Unfortunately, the PM just seems to be incapable of saying that, Peter. And Albanese is now letting himself be played by the Pentagon. He doesn't need to do that. He could just pick up the phone and talk to the president direct.
Yeah, you're right to make the point. I mean, it's like our Prime Minister is on a completely different universe compared to all of our defence players who are focused to Talisman Sabre in our north and Australia's history. And I think a lot of other people in the parliament are on a totally different train in relation to China. And our guys over there, and we'll see what it looks like tomorrow when he meets President Xi, whether it's going to be the handsome boy rubbish all over again, where he's basically, I mean, he thought it was a joke and it was funny. But in fact, you know, Chinese Australians said to me, if you look at the Mandarin speak for what was said, it was a real pat on the head. It was. It certainly wasn't a positive. So when they meet tomorrow, you're a China expert. What are you going to be looking for? I mean, are we going to see something like the Port of Darwin raised because he danced around that one today? Is he going to take the Chinese to task about how our military men and women have been treated in recent months? Is he going to take them to task about incursions in our area or sphere of influence down here? Or is it going to be sweetness and light and panda bears?
Sweetness and light and maybe a panda bear or two, Peter. You know what the Chinese require above everything else here is no surprises. And I think Albanese will be quite comfortable with that. So in what we see of it publicly, it's going to be lots of friendly jokes and exchanges of sporting shirts and that sort of thing, and no substance. And then someone will say in the Prime Minister's travelling party, well, he raised these issues behind closed doors. Frankly, he may, but only in the most oblique way, because I don't think Albanese is for having difficult conversations with Xi Jinping. I think both he and Premier Xi want to get happy snaps out of it. And that's about the level of substance that we're getting from our relationship with China right now.
Let's play some comments the Prime Minister made when he was asked actually about the Point of Darwin today.
If it's raised, our position's very clear, and I'm sure that the President's very clear and is knowledgeable of that. I'll have a discussion with the President. I'll treat him with the respect that I would any leader of another country.
I mean, the more I see about Anthony Albanese, and I know he's been in Parliament, we've both looked at him for, 25 years plus, the more I feel is he reckons the job of leadership is a PR job. And I watch him and I just think, you know, the Emperor's got no clothes. Is the rest of Australia going to wake up to this? Because he's just been voted in. He's unassailable in terms of where he is, in terms of the parliamentary numbers he has. But I think the world's never been more troubled in decades. And I feel like we've got a bloke in charge who's a real lightweight.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree with you. I mean, you never get below the surface of the talking points. And note in particular with China, it's the same talking point all the time. I mean, he's added a new one with we grow our capabilities and we build our relationships. which is his sort of way of brushing off substantive discussion about defence. There is no substance there. And, I fear that the Prime Minister's thinking, Peter, on China is locked in about the mid-1990s when, China was just beginning to grow and America was the unassailable world leader. But we're not in that world anymore. China is now an equal military power with the United States in many respects, wanting to control the region, actually saying that that's what its intention is. And here we are pretending that it's all happiness and light and we have a stabilised relationship. We need more from our Prime Minister. Whether Australians want this or not, I can't tell anymore because clearly they voted for him in large numbers in the election campaigns. Yeah. Maybe they just don't want to hear the difficult messages, Peter. That's a rather concerning thought. But we're not going to get substance in those discussions tomorrow, I can assure you. It's all surface gloss.
All right, we'll come back to it tomorrow night and see where we go, but I suspect you're absolutely right. Peter Jennings, thank you.